Oops, sorry. Only in hindsight do we see that all of Mayor Lee's best laid plans only postponed the inevitable. The march of progress was no match for any redevelopment agency, no matter how skilled. Find out more in Wooster Square Redevelopment, the public justifications, moving from the mythical past into a mythical future. My name is Gina Pettinito, and I'm a visiting scholar at the University of Cincinnati. But these days, I'm spending most of my time on my businesses, Writing Your Way, and Academic Women Reclaim Your Power. One of the main aims of the New Haven Redevelopment Association was to preserve the quaint historic atmosphere of Wooster Square, as they said in one of their papers. Wooster Square had a mix of really beautiful 19th century architecture, Italianate, Greek Revival, and Queen Anne homes, among other 19th century styles. Some of the people that lived in the Wooster Square neighborhood were New Orleans elite, drawn there by the cotton gin. And so the New Haven Redevelopment Association wanted to bring back this mythical past. Now, the word that we use today for this type of process is called gentrification. But they did not use that word because the word was coined in 1964, and they were working and trying to justify redevelopment in the late 1950s, actually the mid to late 1950s. Now, the mythical future was the complete elimination of slums and blight from the city and the development of a healthy, thriving central business district, modern industrial area, and pleasant, attractive residential neighborhoods. When we look at the map of the Ring Road, we see all the way at the right-hand edge, that's Interstate 91. And on the eastern side of Interstate 91 was supposed to be all of the industry. To the western side of Interstate 91 was going to be the pleasant, attractive residential neighborhood. And you can see on the south, it's the Oak Street Connector borders that pleasant, attractive residential neighborhood. That was going to be the newly redeveloped and modernized Wooster Square neighborhood. Now, the ultimate justification was the Franklin Street fire that occurred in January of 1957. And when I went to Wooster Square in the late 20-teens and interviewed 11 former residents of the neighborhood, several of them mentioned this Franklin Street fire. It definitely left an indelible mark so many years later. What happened was a building that had once most likely housed a carriage factory in the late 1800s, and that was making carriages for the horses to draw through the city. It was a lucrative business back in the day, had been transformed into the needle trade, and that there was sheaves and sheaves of papers and fabric on the ground. And if there isn't proper fire precautions, these areas went up like a tinderbox. And 6 young women, I believe that they were all women, burned to death. There were many others that were injured. It was a horrible, horrible event. And here's the irony. That building was scheduled for demolition by the New Haven Redevelopment Association, but they didn't get to it in time. So this Franklin Street fire was then used as Mayor's Lee justification for redevelopment in his State of the City address that he gave in 1957. What did he say? Many industrial establishments would go the way of 62 Franklin Street. Basically, they would be empty halls, or they would be housing some temporary type of factories or secondary factories. And we didn't want to have another fire like this. Many, many people agreed. This was such a horrifying event that when you come forward with this type of justification, people will accept it. But there were other arguments that he made as well. The notion of blight and slum area was described as if it was a cancer spreading through the city, and that if you didn't cut it out at its root, it was going to take over the entire New Haven city. And what did he say? Doing nothing would cause the neighborhoods to fade, and New Haven would be in a hopeless race with the slums. That was their notion, that if you had lower income neighborhoods, these would spread, lower the tax base, the school systems would decline. And so therefore, gentrification, or what they called redevelopment, was a necessity. And again, many people agreed. One of the jewels of the New Haven Redevelopment Association's plan was the Chapel Square Mall. It was supposed to bring people downtown to the city to do their shopping within the Ring Road. And I remember many, many days hopping on the bus in East Haven. I was 13, 14 years old, traveling to the Chapel Square Mall, meeting friends, and spending an entire Saturday afternoon just shopping, hanging out, having an Orange Julius, going to my favorite store, which was Potpourri, where lots and lots of little baubles that would tickle the heart of a 13 or 14-year-old girl was there. But the Chapel Square Mall's success was not permanent. What Mayor Lee anticipated in his 1957 speech, that people would move to the suburbs and the malls would go with them, the shopping areas would go with them, was already a trend in the 1950s. But it became really obvious that this was where our cities were going in the 1980s. People were moving out, people were shopping in strip malls in the suburbs, and then the mega malls in the exurbs. So the Chapel Square Mall was eventually turned into luxury apartments, but one of the things that I want you to consider is that there was a thriving neighborhood underneath that Chapel Square Mall. The Chapel Square Mall was literally built on the bones of that neighborhood. And think of the sacrifice the people who made there had to make for something that basically just lasted for 30 years. Nowadays, gentrification movements and initiatives do take in humanistic approaches, and that humanistic type of redevelopers do want to take into consideration the neighborhood and the people that live here. But unfortunately, these are not universal. And redevelopment, gentrification, and the displacement of local communities still continues to this day. So what's next? I'm going to be talking to you about the New Haven Redevelopment Association's specific plans for the Wooster Square neighborhood. Until then, thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to my blog, or if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to my channel. Until next time.